Diverse, non-binary hobbits for Lord of the Rings Tales of the Shire game coming from Weta, and of course the girl boss of the century for the new Indiana Jones game coming out from Machine Games, which is doing something we've all seen done before in a movie. It's 2024 and I just felt like I watched the gaming industry die, and I think that's a realization for a lot of people as they see bomb after bomb for a lot of video games coming out this summer, where there's just a doom and gloom outlook for a lot of AAA titles. And much more than that, there's a doom and gloom outlook for the gaming industry in general, as we see so much low quality games with hundreds of millions of dollars invested into them fail miserably to capture an audience. And I think that's the thing that we see with a lot of titles that have been released recently from a lot of these AAA organizations that have lost themselves in a message that doesn't matter to gamers. And I think that's the thing we see at the core of games like Dustborn, Star Wars Outlaws, and of course Concord, where they're sending a message that gamers don't want to hear, and it's leading to the collapse of the industry itself. And I think that collapse is leading to the terrible view a lot of gamers have for a lot of titles coming out, where you're getting poor user scores, poor response from the gamers, and overall abysmal player counts for the games that have come out from these organizations, from these developers these past few years. You can just look at the titles that were released this summer and beyond, where we have titles where there's very few players actively playing games that have launched with over $100 million budgets, some of them even $50 million budgets. Even the low budget $10 to $5 million games like Zao only have 9 people playing them, 232 people at their peak. And I think that's the death nail that we've been hearing rattling within the gaming industry, that continues to rattle on with every new announcement of a new game coming out. And this game I'm talking about right now is Tales of the Shire, where you just look at the game's trailer and the overall production staff that is working on this game, you get an immediate understanding of what quality game that you're getting and what political and modern audience outlook that you're receiving from this game. You can just look at the game developers themselves, the people that represent the ideology that we've been seeing pervasive throughout the video gaming industry. Of course, the purple hair is always a good indication of what type of game you're getting nowadays within the modern audience scope. It just indicates what type of people are being hired for the job. And I think for a lot of gamers, we have no problem with a diverse cast of people making games, but oftentimes it just indicates that we're getting a poor quality game. And I think with the games I mentioned before that have been released, the poor sales, poor reaction from game players, these studios were made up of the same type of people that we're seeing with Tales of the Shire. So I don't blame people when they see this trailer for Tales of the Shire. They're going, okay, it has all the same people that made terrible games all summer. I should expect a terrible game upon the release of Tales of the Shire. And I think I would usually want to give these games a chance, but I think a lot of us have been jaded by the current market of games that have come out recently, where we're just getting poor quality games from developers that don't care about games and are more focused on sending a message rather than having a fun time as a gamer. And you can just look at the studio for Tales of the Shire. It's a New Zealand studio, and when you look at the people developing the game, you automatically infer, okay, most of these people are not really developers. They're there to dictate where the game should go, what it should look like, and what pronouns the characters should have, and what relationships they should have, rather than what's the game mechanics that are going to be intriguing and fun for the game players. And I think that's the essential thing that we get from these pictures nowadays when we look at the studio staff, where I'm essentially thinking, okay, if it's 50% women, there's going to be probably a low quality game, when in the past I wouldn't think like that, because we had high quality games from female developers that created epic games that established franchises that are still running today. I'm talking about Assassin's Creed. It had a lead female developer that created one of the best franchises in the history of gaming, at least up until Black Flag. And I think that's when you look at the core makeup of these developers and you expect to just have talented people working on the development of a game, but that's not the case anymore. We have political activists pushed at the forefront to direct games that they don't understand, don't care to understand, but just want to release their message. When in the past you had a lot of female developers that were there to make a cool game, and that is the mindset you want for a game developer who wants to make something fun and engaging for the gamer. And I think that's the thing that we lost in this update and modernization of video games with political thoughts and philosophies injected into them at the core, rather than fun being at the core. And I think this is the thing that's stripping away the relevance and killing the gaming industry. You can see with the new Ubisoft, where it's just stripped away of any of the past people that made the game. It's more focused on gender, racial dynamics, rather than the quality game makers that were there to make the games at a high level in the past. And I think that is lost when you're just focused on gender or racial dynamics, rather than high quality dev skills and the ability to actually identify what a gamer actually wants from a game. And I think that's the thing that is lost within the gaming industry. And we can see that with continuous releases of new games that are coming out, where when we look at the devs like Tales for the Shire, you look at the devs, you automatically see that semblance to the new Ubisoft staff. Purple hair, blue hair, glasses, very few men, and mostly focused on gender, racial dynamics, rather than actually talented devs. And I think that's the thing people assume, essentially, because we've been seeing this throughout the industry, where these type of devs haven't been able to produce a high quality game, so they're associated now with low quality games. And that's a problem when you don't focus on meritocracy. I'm assuming you probably can gather a lot of people with these gender and racial attributes that can produce a high quality game, but it's going to take effort to do that. And I think rather than effort, they just found an amalgamation of people that fit these gender and racial demographics, threw them in a room regardless of their talent, and are asking them to make a high quality game when they've never even made a game before, or they have no interest in making a game. And I think that's the product that we're seeing with Star Wars Outlaws and this complete buggy mess that people have been complaining about, because it feels like it wasn't made by gamers. And when you're looking at Ubisoft staff, you realize, oh, those are not gamers. Those are people there for their political activism rather than their gaming knowledge or skills to code or develop games. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing resulting in the industry, where we're getting terrible assortment of floptastic games like Dustborn that just feel half measured and uninspired to actually make something that is engaging to a person that just wants to escape and immerse in a new world. And I think that's the logic that we're seeing right now with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where it's failing to capture the audience and is barely ranking 50 in pre-orders, at least across Japan, and it's just showing the lack of interest in a lot of games coming out from these big AAA developers. And it goes on with what I call the 2024 floptastic summer, where we're seeing every single game that has come out or anything related to games fail miserably because of this overhyped focus. And the future seems to be the same thing, with a lot of titles that still have this hyper focus on racial gender dynamics in the modern audience. And I think we see this coming with games like The Awakening, like Fair Game, like Fable, like Avowed, that have this obsession with modern day political activism rather than producing a high quality game. And this continues on with Indiana Jones, where we already had a terrible Indiana Jones movie that kind of lost itself in the modern audience trope. Now we're having a game doing exactly the same thing, with including a lot of these elements of the girl boss dominating the male figure in a title, which is something we get tired of recently, because it's a trope that's being used over and over again. And just recently in the new Indiana Jones movie, we just saw it happen, and now we're having it happening again with a new game where we have a strong girl boss character that is going to show Indiana Jones the way of how to be an appropriate archaeologist. So this is something we are just tired of seeing as gamers, where we're just being inundated with this modern day political activism that means nothing to a gamer who's just trying to have fun. And that's why I have to say, the gaming industry is probably dying slowly right now, and it's happening with these continuous new releases that are failing to get the point, or are unable to change now. They're so deep that they just have to release. And I think that's the thing that's happening in the gaming industry today. We're watching the party die, to quote Kendrick Lamar. And Indiana Jones and these new games coming out like Tales of the Shire are the best example of that, where we have developers and game directors saying, we're just here to tell a modern audience story rather than make something attractive and appealing like The First Descendant and a lot of these other titles that are blowing out these AAA studios that are hyper focused on racial gender politics. And I think that's the thing that we're hoping for as gamers to see within the Western games development sphere. We're hoping to see fun gameplay, beautiful designs, and just a focus on the gamers themselves, and that's the thing that's missing nowadays within the industry. And I don't know if it will ever come back, but hopefully having another Concord situation where we have games completely fall flat on their face may lead to some developers to changing their mind. We see that happening with Disney, where they've changed their entire mind of how to develop some of the Pixar properties, and they excluded some elements from the failure of a box office movie Lightyear and subtracted some of those elements from their box office hit Inside Out 2. And I think this is them realizing, okay, if we want to make a profit, we have to realize who's the majority of our audience. This has come from Disney, one of the most politically progressive organizations on the planet Earth. And I think maybe a video game developer may recognize this and change after the massive failures that are about to be dumped out into the public this coming year and beyond. But you tell me what you think about the situation. Tell me what you think about the industry dying, and how long will it last? I want to hear your thoughts about it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.